Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Eating at a Meeting. I am your host, Tracy Stuckrath, and I am excited to be here with you today. I need to mute my Instagram page. There we go, because I was hearing myself in the headphones. But I'm excited to introduce you to Ashley Orr, that's right here. She is the baker and owner of Sweet Nothings Bakery and Cafe in Raleigh, North Carolina. And Sweet Nothings is a 100% gluten-free bakery that is operating out of a shared kitchen space. And that's really why I wanted to talk to her today, because you've heard me on a couple of episodes ago when I had an attorney and two chefs talking about, one convention center saying that we're not going to feed the celiacs, and a meeting planner trying to find us something to feed these guests at her event because of that. So I'm going to talk to Ashley about how she does this and how we can learn as event professionals and venues from her and what she does. And I'm excited to see that, Ashley, we already have 5 people watching us as the minute started. So you are a hot topic, my friend.
Awesome.
Well, and I just met you last week, right?
Yeah, I think it's literally been a full 7 days that we've known each
Right.
other.
Exactly. And just so you know, her bakery is located in the Little Blue Bakery, did I say that right?
Little Blue
In
Bakehouse.
Little Blue Bakehouse, thank you, in Raleigh, and that is owned by my friend Allison Vick. And when Ashley was making her pastries in there, and I'm like, wait a minute, I need to talk to you. I'm like, how are you doing this? What are you doing? And I said, can you be on the show next week? So that is how we're here. So I was just going to cut to the chase, Ashley. And this is the first question I ask you. I'm like, you are a gluten-free baker in a shared kitchen space. And my first question was like, how do you do this? And do you have people who are celiac that buy your food? And how do you guarantee it? So how do you make gluten-free pastries in a kitchen that is not certified gluten-free?
So I actually get that question so much, and I totally understand it because I myself would have that question. But one of the main things is honestly sanitization, making sure that things are being cleaned and sanitized around the clock. So when I get into the bakehouse, I sanitize all of my equipment, my station, anything in my work area. As I'm baking and making things, I'm still cleaning, sanitizing, and then at the end of the day, I repeat that whole process over again. So it's a lot of constant cleaning, washing your hands. And another huge part is the people I work with in the bakehouse, they're absolutely phenomenal when it comes to understanding gluten free and the fact that we don't want to have any issues where there's cross contact. And so that's been a huge, huge help.
That's great. And I think you also pointed out that there's 4 ovens, and you basically use the oven on the top right. Not that that needs to be that specific, but you also all use your own equipment. So you're not using shared equipment.
Yes, all of my equipment, my baking stuff is all mine. Even the fridge, freezer, all of that stuff. The only thing that we do share are the ovens. And as you said, I use that top right one. And it is our old girl. She's an old oven, very temperamental. So a lot of people don't actually like to bake in that one, which worked out perfect for me because there's literally never anyone in there. So it's my own little personal oven kind of that I get to keep gluten free.
Right. And then I liked at the front of the house, where you sell all your pastries, each one of you has your own display case. So your stuff is never in a case with the other pastries.
Yeah, so we have our completely own refrigerated case that has its own like closed off doors and everything. At no one point are they touching. They're sitting next to each other, but the product itself, there's never any touching or anything.
Yeah. And so when she says they're sitting next to each other, it's like the refrigerated containers are sitting next to each other and there's no contact of the pastries themselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I love, and they're each one, I love it too, that each one of them is branded separately. So they know, so you know which one that you're pulling out of and which company you're buying from. So that if somebody's walking into that pastry shop, they know to look for yours, and you have signage on there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So besides gluten-free, or okay, so let's go back to this. How did you, and what inspired you to become a baker, and why is the focus on gluten-free?
Honestly, I've had a huge passion for baking like my whole entire life. I always grew up baking things in the kitchen with my mom and grandma, and it just really made me love the creativity behind it because you can always create something new. And the shift in focus on gluten free has been because I myself am gluten free. I have an allergy, so I can't eat it. And with that being said, once I found out, so I found out in 2019, let me reverse. Found out in 2019 that I had a gluten allergy. So I had went a long time with eating gluten and having serious stomach issues and health issues, but not knowing that was the root cause behind all of it. And so I didn't really understand what gluten was. I didn't understand how to find the products or what was gluten free versus what wasn't. And so that was a whole thing in itself. But upon doing all of that, I didn't really find much that I liked. And the
Mhm.
few options that are out there, it was very hit or miss. And it was one of those things I was missing like a cinnamon roll. So all these
Mhm.
like nice baked goods that I used to be able to have that I now couldn't. And it just made me go, you know what? I can do this. I'll figure it out. And that's basically what I did. And that's how Sweet Nothings come to be.
Well, nice. And you, and I want to, we had this conversation just before we came on live, like, because some people might say, well, you have a gluten allergy. And so that's different than celiac disease.
Hmm.
And it's probably a little bit different than non-celiac gluten sensitivity as well. So, can you talk a little bit about that without getting into the gory details?
Yeah, of course. So I do understand it is different. I'm severe myself, and each allergy is different. But I am very sensitive to it. I cannot even eat something if it's been cross-contacted. Um, and God forbid I accidentally ingest gluten in itself. I get very violently sick and ill. Usually lasts for about a week, so not fun at all. But I do understand where a lot of people who are celiac or, stuff like that, they feel a little bit more concerned because I'm not technically celiac. Um, but I have so many friends who are, and I myself being put through being glutened basically, that I don't want to be sick. I don't want to feel like that. And I definitely don't want other people to feel like that either.
Well, no, and exactly. And being glutened is not fun. It's a variety of different challenges that come with being glutened that we
Yes, it
don't,
is.
definitely don't want to talk about on air. But so are there any other allergens or ingredients that you avoid in your pastries?
I wouldn't necessarily say avoid in all of them. Of course, gluten being that top
Mhm.
one, anything associated with gluten. So, malt, I stay away from
Mhm.
anything like that. But another thing we do is we offer vegan and dairy free products. So, we kind
Okay.
of can cover a range of things. It's really just all of them what the customer client is looking for. But
Hmm.
we usually keep vegan items rotating in and out of our case. And with those, we make sure that there's no nuts in them. So it
Hmm.
it really just depends on the product and what the customer's looking for.
Well, and I'm going to see if I can do this. Here's a picture of your pastries in the container, right? And I love how, if you can, I'm going to zoom in really closely here. This is my cheating way to do this. That you put, like, it says coffee, cake, cookie, eggs, and dairy are listed. So that's your contain statement basically on that,
Hmm.
right? Yep. And then
Yeah.
like down at that other one, it says eggs, dairy, almonds, and soy. So, and so you're clearly identifying the top allergens in your food, not just the gluten-free aspect of it.
Oh yeah, and
Yeah.
we even identify if there's corn because a lot of people have corn allergens.
Mhm,
So it's really looking at those top 9 big allergies
mhm.
and making sure that if any product contains those, they are clearly labeled and listed somewhere that the customer can see it.
Okay, awesome. You have a fan here, Madison Guthrie. That's our girl. Yay. Thanks for tuning in, Madison. And if any of you have questions for Ashley, please put them in the chat wherever you're watching. I've got Margaret and Michigan Gluten-Free Gal, as well as Marginally 42 watching on Instagram over here too. So if you have any questions, please let us know. Okay, so I want to step back a little bit more because I love your protocol on that, but you're cleaning and you're sanitizing every day. And then I saw you wrapping up dough, for
Mhm.
what were those, the scones you were making, right?
Yeah.
But so what I want to clarify too, you said you have your own fridge.
Oh yeah, I have my own fridge and my own freezer.
Okay.
My whole entire station is
Hmm.
mine. And like I said before, the staff and other people I work with, they are very understanding about making sure that nothing with gluten even really goes near my station.
Okay. Well, and I think that's important. And we've got Little Blue Bakehouse here giving you high fives. Hello,
Mm.
Little Blue Bakehouse. Allison, hello, my friend. Um, so, I mean, that's really important because you have that great relationship with Allison, who owns the bakehouse, as well as the other people who are in the other bakers that are in there. And I know that Allison does some gluten-free macarons. I don't know how I say that right. She'll kill me. But so I think that's important to have that good relationship with them. And was that something that you have the bakers changed since you've been there?
Honestly, no.
Okay.
They're the sweetest people ever. Like I absolutely adore where I work in the bakehouse. But it even going into it, they all had their understanding of what gluten was, making sure that things weren't being cross contacted and all of that stuff.
Hmm. Well, that's good. So, I mean, I think that's an important, I'm typing in over here. I've got Blake Burgess and Forever Simply Me has joined us on Instagram as well. If you have any questions for Ashley, let us know. But I think, when you're talking about a big commercial kitchen, right? A convention center or a hotel or even a restaurant, how can they learn from what the relationship that you have with Allison and the other bakers in the Little Blue Bakehouse in managing that allergen, that cross contact?
Honestly, the biggest step is communication. You have to communicate with the people that you're working with. I mean, honestly, with anything, I was going to say with gluten stuff, but it really goes for anything that you're doing in a kitchen. There always needs to be good communication put
Mhm,
forth from everyone because that's how you do avoid some of these situations. Like if you told the cashier that you couldn't have XYZ, but that cashier didn't tell the cook, then you're going to get cross contaminated.
mhm.
So,
Yeah. Well, and I think that, okay, Allison throws in here, woohoo! Ashley's stuff is incredible. And I had a couple of things. I had your Pop Tart and
uh-huh.
I had your blueberry scone. And they were both delicious.
Well, thank
Um,
you.
you're welcome. I mean, I think, and that's because we get venues, and I said it at the very beginning of the show. There's a venue, that has a convention centers that said we will not feed the people who are celiac, right? And
Mhm.
so that's leaving this meeting planner to find food and beverage off site for this group of people. I think it was 10 people. But I mean, you're in a very, like, how big is that kitchen space? I mean, what, double the
Uh,
size of my bedroom? you know?
I'm at least 2,000 square feet.
Right. Yeah. So, and thinking a convention center or a hotel that has multiple, kitchens, it's doable.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
absolutely doable. It really boils down to how bad they want it, if they want to serve that clientele. Because, like with the bakehouse, I have my own station and space that is fully gluten free. Nothing that contains gluten will ever go in that space. And I feel like if other places did that, where they could just dedicate one section,
Hmm.
regardless of where it be, if they could just dedicate a specific space, then they would feel a lot more comfortable with being able to serve that clientele.
Right. And the fact that you come in and you clean in the morning beforehand, and then you clean throughout the entire process, because there's that, the learning when you're taking, when you're learning about gluten and food safety and things like that, the flour could potentially stay in the air for 48 hours, right? If you're baking
Hmm.
a lot of things. But you're constantly cleaning your equipment throughout the day while you're making.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And not just wiping things down, like things are being washed, sanitized, all those good things. And another thing too is once we're done baking something, it immediately is going into a container that is airproof, like it's got that tight airlock to it. And it either goes into our fridge or we'll sit it and then maybe put something on top of it. But it's multiple steps to make sure that there's no sort of gluten getting on the product.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Madison just came back on here and said, you got to try the ooey gooey bars. All right, Madison. Well, I'm in
Yeah,
Raleigh.
those have been a huge hit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, what would you like consumers to know, and consumers to know about your products, as well as those who have celiac that are potentially concerned about this, in educating them? And if Madison or Allison, if you have celiac, let me know. And, because that would be, how do you work with it, or how do you feel about this? And, in doing this, and Ashley, how do you talk to your customers about it?
So I tell them the honest truth that I do work in a shared kitchen space and there is always a risk for something coming across contact. That's just the very honest truth. I will never lie or put on a face to make a sale, because I want people to feel comfortable and make their own decisions. But I do truly go through so many different steps to ensure that that product never comes in contact with gluten and that the product itself is gluten free. A huge way I really started doing that is I make my own flour blend. I don't buy gluten-free flour from the store. And I can't remember what company it was, but I recently found out one of the gluten-free flours actually has removed wheat starch, which isn't celiac safe. So it's things like that, just going that extra step, making those things myself to really ensure I know what I'm putting into my products.
Okay, that's awesome. All right, so Madison has a question for you. What are some baked goods you've seen in the area that aren't gluten free that you would like to create soon?
Mm. Well, we have so Andrew from Little Blue Ox is right across from us,
Hmm.
and I see him make donuts and croissants all day long. And that is one recipe that we have been trying true testing, trying to find one that we actually like. We do have a good cake donut recipe that is pretty good,
Hmm.
but I want a nice yeasted kind of very similar to a Krispy Kreme donut.
Oh my
And
gosh! Wow!
yeah, like imagine a gluten-free Krispy Kreme donut. It
Right?
Everyone would be so happy.
Yeah, they just melt in your mouth. Yeah,
Exactly, and that's hard to find a lot of times with
yeah.
gluten-free. Especially gluten-free is all of it's huge on texture stuff. It's very hit or miss on the
Yep.
textures, and that is one of the struggles we've been having with making our own donut.
Hmm.
Um, But it's so much fun trying to create new stuff, especially things that I myself haven't had in 7, 8 years, and I
Mhm.
just really, really want it. So I'm gonna find a way to make it.
Well, even my mom made a cake, and we use a certain cake mix, gluten-free cake mix that we've loved. But I think even the procedure on making gluten-free products plays into it as well, because the cake she most recently made came out very dense, and typically it's not dense. And so,
Yeah.
and it's like she's like, I don't want to bake any other cake. This is a great cake, but this time it came out really dense, and maybe she over mixed it, or did something with it. So I think the technique with it making gluten free also plays into it. So I commend you for kind of figuring that out. All right, Allison has a question for you. What is the biggest challenge you've encountered thus far in your business as it relates to being gluten free?
Um, Honestly, getting people to give me a try. Like, as sad as that might sound, that has honestly been one of our biggest struggles is gluten-free stuff isn't really that great. There are very few options that I personally, in my own opinion, have enjoyed. They have a gritty or dry texture, or they just fall apart and crumble. So I've been huge on, like we were just talking about, the textures and the technique on how to get it.
Mhm,
And I have been able to figure out how to make gluten-free stuff taste not gluten-free.
mhm.
Um, and I feel comfortable saying that statement because I have
Right.
so many people who have tried my stuff not even knowing that it was gluten-free, and it immediately become like one of their top favorite items. Or when I told them that it was gluten-free, they were blown away because they genuinely had no idea.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's just been one of the biggest struggles is having people have that stigma towards it and how it tastes and not really giving us a shot.
Yeah. Well, and overheard a woman, I don't remember where I was. She's like, she said, my son will not touch anything that's gluten free because it's just gross. And I just wanted to go punch her, because I'm like an apple is gluten free, right? I'm like, there are things that are gluten free. I'm like, you don't, I mean, I think the biggest thing is the pastry side of the whole thing, right? And which
Yeah.
is what you make. But I mean, there are so many foods out there that are gluten free that you eat on a daily basis, right? And so you don't, but the pastry thing is the one that is the biggest thing. Um, okay, so we thank you. There's Forever Simply Me is over on here on Instagram. Flyboy Burgess, S Zarbro is joined us live on Instagram. If you have any questions for Ashley, let me know. And we have a couple of more questions here for you. Andrew has, what separates you from other gluten-free bakeries?
Um, Honestly, I think making my own flour.
Mhm,
It was truly a process trying to figure out how to create these recipes. I
mhm,
mean, I mentioned I didn't even find out until 2019 that I was officially allergic. And so it was a learning curve, a lot of researching. And I think having that passion of wanting something so much that you're determined to make it
mhm,
happen, and then finding ways to do that, like the flour and my chocolate chip cookie recipe took 17 different tries before I was able to actually find one that worked. So it's just that drive and passion that's going to make me a little bit different from other bakeries. I'm going to go that extra mile.
Okay, so there are two people backing you up here on chats here. So Blake Burgess said, "I do not have celiac disease, nor am I gluten free, but I absolutely love, in all caps, Ashley's products. I prefer her products to those that do have gluten in them. They're just that good." That's awesome, Blake.
That
Thank you
is
so much.
awesome.
Yeah, you have a huge fan there. And then Allison piped in here, who is the owner of Little Blue Bakehouse. When Ashley came to tour the bakehouse, she brought us some pastry samples, including her chocolate chip cookies. And I, Allison, wasn't here. So when I found the stash later and ate the cookie, I said, dang, this is the best cookie, not knowing she was a gluten-free baker. Wow. So she didn't know you were gluten-free. I mean, that's interesting as well. So how did you didn't disclose that when you went to looking for the space? And why did you not do that?
So it was disclosed, but I left that sample box in the hands of someone else, and the box itself wasn't labeled like Ashley gluten-free baker, anything
Right.
like
Yeah.
that. So when she saw it, she just snagged her little sample. And because it wasn't labeled, she didn't think anything of it.
Right. That's awesome. Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing that, Allison and Blake. I appreciate that. Have you, and I do want to say that when Allison was checking me out last week when I was buying your scone and your pastry or your Pop Tart, she could talk about all the different items like that everybody baked. Do you all share that same kind of knowledge with everybody's? And so when somebody comes in and orders your product and maybe one of the other bakers is there at the cash register, and if maybe it's Allison that does that, are you all familiar with everybody's products?
We're all pretty familiar. I mean, we don't know every single item that
Mhm.
another person offers, but that is genuinely just because of how diverse we all are, and we're
Mhm.
putting out so many different products. I mean, at any given time, you can find probably 50, 60 different items between
Yeah.
all our cases. So it's a lot, but we are always communicating. We're giving each other a heads up on what we're making or getting ideas from each other on flavors or what we could do
Mhm.
for an upcoming holiday event, you name it. So again, it's huge on communicating.
Okay. All right. Awesome. What have you ever had a close call learning moment in the kitchen that shaped how you approach the food safety aspect of what you're, and all the protocols that you have?
Um, So in the kitchen at the bakery, not really. I wouldn't say I've had any close calls, but definitely at home, being someone who has the allergy, having a husband who does not, there are some close calls that we've had where it's been like, oh, he just used the toaster. I forgot to wash it and I just put my toast in there. And it's one of those things where you're like, oh wait, rewind, we gotta reset this and kind of get it figured back out.
Hmm.
But that's really about it. When it comes to the kitchen, I am focused, I am on it, ready for the day.
Okay. All right. Awesome. When you go out, what are the questions that you ask of a restaurant or a venue that's got baked goods, or when you're, because it would be really nice to know how you handle your diet, your gluten allergy when you go out. What are the things that you recommend other people's asking?
One of the biggest things I ask, if I do not see it clearly labeled on the menu with a gluten-free symbol, I'll ask them directly, is this gluten-free? Can you recommend anything that is fully gluten-free on your menu? Another thing is asking if it's in a dedicated space, if it's in a spot where other gluten items have been made on it.
Hmm.
And those are really the two big main ones. Double checking to make sure that the food you're actually eating will not
Hmm.
contain any gluten, because as we all know, sometimes it's hidden, like in malt. A lot of people don't know that that has gluten in it, and it's just a
Hmm.
caramel coloring. So it could be in your soda, could be in your food. So it's just one of those things you have to be extra cautious, which is unfortunate,
Hmm.
but it's good to ask those questions, and
Right.
people shouldn't ever feel like they can't ask those questions because it's their health and safety that's at risk. So yeah, totally ask them, is it gluten free? Do you have the space to make it where it's gluten free? Is there any sort of cross contact? And based on those answers, you kind of get to make your own choice.
Yeah, and how that server answers, or what, oh, I don't know. Let me, you can
Yeah.
kind of ascertain what that is. Oh, all right. Allison just corrected me. She disclosed she was just touring with my husband Carl, so I didn't know. Okay, so
There we go.
there we go. All right, and then thank you for that clarification, Allison. And then Madison come in. Ashley classically likes to tell me about a new product she wants to make, and then it's an exact replica of a product I just finished making.
This happens more times than not in the bakehouse. There
Yeah.
was one morning she was like, "Have you got any new products you're thinking about?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm actually thinking about a cookies and cream cinnamon roll." And she just casually shows me hers on her station and goes, "You mean like this?" And I was like, "Yep, just like that."
Wow. Well, and then that's great because that's two different people making that same thing. And so that if I'm coming in and buying the pastries, I can buy one that's regular and then one that's not. And kind of on that note, how do you know, this is more of the front of the house sales thing. When I'm putting it into when you're putting it into a box, and to serve, how are yours separated from the other ones, or is that question asked of the customer before you put it in a container? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So when someone orders, like let's say they get something out of a gluten case versus my case, what
Hmm.
the front of house staff will do is ask them, is it an allergy and would you like it put into a separate box? That way they know that this product is gluten free. We'll put it in a different box for you. And then another thing they do is change their gloves. Even before they've touched any part of my case, the gloves are changed and then that item is placed into a completely separate box.
So that's really great front of house protocols, from Allison's team or your whole team on that, because you don't want somebody using the same gloves to touch that food.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean,
Mhm.
I have the issue with cross contact. So like,
Right. Yeah.
and that's another thing I was talking about earlier. Like the whole entire staff, the bakers, front of house, all of them, they've been truly amazing when it comes to understanding the gluten-free aspect, even though I was a newer part to the kitchen, having
Mhm.
that specialty, they just adapted to it. They learned what they needed to, and they followed those protocols to make sure that the customers are safe.
That's awesome. And when they're reaching in, are you guys using tongs, or are you just using the hands, and that's the glove switching, so to get those pastries out of the cabinets?
So they switched to gloves. Yeah.
Okay, so it's
And then
not tongs
depending,
that could be used again. Yeah.
oh, no, 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 no,
Mhm.
no.
Yeah.
And like occasionally I may have something in there that maybe is a little bit too loose for them to technically pick up with their hands. So I'll put in my own personal spatula from the back, and that'll sit in my case.
Okay. All right. Awesome. That's send that spam to voicemail. Do you um what advice can you give to event venues and convention centers? I know you touched on this a little bit, that claim they just can't do it. I mean, and again, you said this a little bit, but the um I don't think they value or they understand, and that's not right, the way that I say that, but they underestimate they underestimate the power of having clear standard operating procedures, right? And really,
Mhm.
so what can you share about that? Advice can you give to those venues and those other caterers on doing this? Because I do know somebody, like, said to me, well, once you take it out of the box and you put it on a thing, you can't call it gluten free anymore, right? And I mean, that means I can only have prepackaged food, like, right? That doesn't seem fair.
Yeah, for sure. And that, again, another reason I created the business is I wanted people to have options like that.
Hmm.
But some advice that I would give to these places that just say, no, we will not serve, celiacs or people with these allergens is take a pause, maybe look at yourself in the mirror and understand that you're discriminating against people who have an allergen that we literally cannot help. Like I'm
Hmm.
telling you, I can promise people who have celiac, myself having a gluten allergy, we want to eat the gluten. We want it. We just literally cannot. And so maybe just figure out how to get those protocols put into place. Talk to your staff and communicate with them on what gluten is, what does it mean, how can we keep places safe and keep people safe. And
Hmm.
the again, communication. It's one of the biggest issues. You have to talk to people and you have to set clear standard guidelines so that they
Hmm.
understand this is what we have to do. There is no other way to do it. This is what's going to keep people safe.
Yeah. Yeah. And there, I think and just kind of talking the front of house stuff too, there's a big disconnect too from the kitchen, from the event manager, excuse me, to the kitchen, to the front of the house staff. And sometimes, those front of house staff are part-time. They're coming in only for that day of, they might not know. So really having those SOPs and, that clear labeling is really valuable.
Oh, 100%. I definitely feel like when you're doing training in a restaurant, that should be part of the training, learning about allergens and how to safely avoid
Hmm.
giving someone an issue, pretty
Right.
much.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a lot, but it can honestly be done. It just takes a little bit of effort, and to want things to be different and change.
Yeah.
You've got to want to serve everyone and not single people out. And there's a way to do it.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. Well, and a couple of weeks ago, I had Senator Turner from Chicago or from Illinois on the show, and she went out to dinner with her chief of staff, who was recently diagnosed with celiac, and she witnessed the lack of knowledge from the server, and they also gave her a grid and said, "Here, figure out what you can eat." And now they have together written a law that is now sitting on the governor of Illinois' desk to say that all food service people have to go through gluten and celiac training to understand what it means when they're serving. And they will be the first state in the country to do so, because it's really just allergens on all the other training. And so I love the fact that they're doing that. But I also, the protocols that you have in place, I mean, Little Blue Bakehouse, to me, and with your partner, you're part of that. I think you're leading that way here in North Carolina. Yeah.
oh, thank you. And yeah,
You're
that's amazing that they're doing that. I truly think that that needs to be established in more places,
welcome.
because I think we touched up on this a little bit, but people don't take a gluten allergy serious. Not as serious as they do other allergens. It's seen as a, oh, well, you can just have a little bit. It won't mess with you that bad. And it's just not
Mhm.
the case. It's no different than a nut allergy or shellfish or any of the other ones. It's just as major. And I just feel like that's where a lot of disconnect comes from. People don't understand what gluten is. They don't
Right.
really, they have no education on it. So,
Mhm.
yeah, definitely having something in place for training on what gluten is and how
Right.
to make sure it's safe. 100% yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to, besides Andrew or Blake, and that said he loves your product, and what can you share a story about a customer who's been greatly impacted by your business, positively impacted?
So my mom and my mother-in-law are actually, they both have gluten allergies too.
Mhm.
So it has been amazing to give them food that they have not been able to eat and enjoy eating it in many, many, many years, way longer than I had it. So it's just felt really, really good to be able to give what I love doing back to people who deserve to eat whatever they want to.
Yeah.
And I have friends who are celiac who they just didn't feel safe eating other stuff, or they hadn't had something in so long because it wasn't made in a safe way, and they're
Mhm.
able to have that with me, and it's been a game changer for him. Like, one of my really good friends, she is forever coming to get cinnamon rolls because she can't find good cinnamon rolls anywhere. So
That's awesome. And I just want to put this Madison said this a few minutes ago, but I want to put this up here too. It says you guys talk about new ideas and ways to make it your own gluten-free. And that's kind of going back to what you just kind of reiterated with your friend. You're trying to make, and your mom and your mother-in-law, like, make these products that they've wanted to have and like you've wanted to have, but you're making it gluten-free and I'm going to say edible and delicious, right? Yeah.
yeah. That's one of the biggest things.
Right. Yeah. Because I'm like, you can eat in something and you're like, oh my God, that's just horrible. I'm not going to take by one bite of it. Right. But,
Yeah.
um, and why would anybody want to serve that? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
that's another thing that maybe sets us apart from some places that just try to do gluten free the very
Mhm,
easy way is
mhm.
we're not going to do that. We want it to taste so good that you can't tell that it's gluten free. And so
Right.
any product we put out there, that's the quality that we're going for.
Right. This just popped into my head based on a brand that I love,
Hmm.
and some other ones too. But is there a excess amount of sugar in your products to make them taste good, or are you balancing that sugar out? I mean, you're not like, because I was eating one and it was 27 grams of sugar in it per cookie or per cupcake.
Oh my
Yeah, I
goodness.
know. Exactly. It's really good, but I'm like, I don't, need 27 grams of sugar in one cupcake. So how do you balance that out? You're not using sugar to make it good. You're using other skill sets.
Yeah, so one of the biggest things is making my own flour blend. I've been able to make a flour blend that is not as textured as most gluten-free things.
Mhm,
But another thing is you don't always need extra sugar. It's not always about the sweetness to me. It's more
mhm,
about the feel. How is it squishy and soft? Will it bounce back at you type of thing? And with that comes making sure the butter ratio is where it needs to be. And with gluten free, you need a little bit more moisture in it.
mhm.
So a lot of times you'll see gluten free places using buttermilk or something that's acidic to help kind of give it that fluffiness that you
Right,
otherwise wouldn't get that would turn to being dense.
right. Okay. If anybody questions you, they shouldn't, because you know your stuff here. I Your baking stuff. Okay, so Allison just threw in here. It also just seems like a massively untapped market. Like, why wouldn't you want to offer gluten-free items when there's such a large percent of the population that would love to have them? Totally, Allison. I
Yeah.
agree with that. Yeah. All right, and then my friend Martin just piped in. Hello, my friend. Everybody deserves a good cinnamon roll. 27 grams of sugar low. Wow. Yeah, that's way too
Yeah,
much sugar.
that's insane.
Especially when they're so good and like I eat four of them because they're so good. Like, no, I don't need that many. All
Yeah,
right.
because how
And
can you not if it tastes good? So
right, exactly. All right. And Carl, ooey gooey bar. He an all exclamation point, three
yep.
exclamation points there. Yes. You have some huge fans. I'm really excited.
Thank you.
For you. You're welcome. Okay, so let's do some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Okay. Chocolate chip cookie or churro cheesecake cookie?
Chocolate chip cookie.
Okay. What is one ingredient that you will never bake with?
Oh, probably mushrooms. And don't get me wrong, I only say that because I personally don't like them at all, any way, shape, or form. I do not like mushrooms. And so I don't feel like I could make a product with them in them and give you a legit opinion because my opinion would be I don't like it.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm like that with cucumbers and mushrooms. So, yeah,
Nice.
yeah. Your go-to baking soundtrack or podcast?
Oh, I'm big
I'm
into
gonna say podcast is going to
audiobooks.
be eating at a meeting.
Of course, 100%. Yeah,
All
I
right. So,
listen to a little bit of everything. There's
mhm,
not really a specific playlist. It's
mhm,
kind of a blend of different stuff. And then other people in the bakehouse also play music. We'll have
mhm.
throwback days, and so it's really a accumulation of different stuff.
Okay, Allison just piped in. I'm offended by the mushroom comment.
I know she is. She loves mushrooms.
I'm sorry, honey. You can eat all of my mushrooms. I don't need to have any mush. You can have them all. And Martin, he's a DJ. I want you to chime in and say what should be a good playlist for the gluten-free bakery or the Little Blue Bakehouse. What should they have in the back of the house?
That would be
Um,
awesome.
yeah. Okay, so what do you always keep stocked in your kitchen besides flour?
Butter.
Okay.
Butter. Yeah,
And
it's
do
pretty
you
much
like the Kerrygold butter, like that rich and like that Irish butter, or what kind of butter are you using?
I get the butter from Costco. I buy that
Okay.
the whole entire box. I buy that. It's called a case. but it has a good fat content, which seems to really work with my gluten-free stuff without completely collapsing it. So
Okay.
that's been about the best brand I found so far for me.
Okay. All right. Madison just piped in here. 100% watches Bob's Burgers while baking. So
I
you
do.
do, or oh,
I do.
really?
I also
Okay.
listen to their soundtrack. It's amazing.
Yeah, okay. Good to know. Good to know. Okay. And one final question for you. Finish this sentence. A great gluten-free baked good should always.
Tastes great.
Yeah.
It should
Yeah.
never come at a cost. It should always taste good.
Hmm. Yep. Yep. Okay. So actually, that just thought of something. All of the prices of your pastries in the different containers are they all about the same price, or are your gluten-free products more expensive? I think that's something because some people say, well, I'm going to charge you. There's a surcharge for a gluten-free product.
Yeah, and so some of that I don't agree with. Like if I go
Mhm.
to a restaurant and they want me to pay $3 extra just so I can have a gluten-free burger bun, that's insane.
Mhm.
So those types of things, I don't really like that. While my prices will be a little bit higher than the others, that is purely due to how I'm making it. So making my own flour blend for 50 pounds, it cost me about $150 to make that. And I go through 50 pounds of flour about every week and a half, two
Oh
weeks
my
tops.
gosh. Wow.
So it's those types of things using higher quality, higher grade stuff. It's going to make the cost go up a little bit, but it's so worth it to get that flavor.
Right. Exactly. All right. Martin chimed in here. That's a great question. It depends on the vibe they want to set. And then he finished it with the next one. Yacht Rock is making a serious comeback right now. Kind of goes with the pastel blue vibe too. So there you go. Think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. Awesome. I am so happy to have met you, and I am so excited to have talked to you today. Is there anything? Oh, actually, let's see. I think I have a banner here. Check out, connect with Ashley. That's Instagram. Is that also Facebook? The Sweet Nothings Bakery and Cafe.
Mhm, it is.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. You can find her there, and you can find her inside the Little Blue Bakehouse in Raleigh, North Carolina. Do you ship?
I can ship.
Okay.
It does get a little pricey, especially when you start
Okay.
going in with the overnight fees and stuff, but
Right.
that's completely customer preference, but I do offer shipping.
Okay. And you can do custom orders, right?
Yeah, I love making custom cakes, cupcakes. If someone has a random idea that they just were like, "Hey, maybe this works." I'm gonna go, "Hey, yeah, let's test it."
Okay. All right. Awesome. Ashley, thank you so much. I appreciate you providing an option for us people who eat gluten free, as well as the people who don't eat gluten free and really enjoy your products. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me today.
You're welcome. And your website is same thing, basically the same thing as your Instagram handle, right?
Yeah, so my website is linked on my social medias in the
Okay.
bios.
Okay.
But the website name is Bakesy, and then it's
Okay.
like a really long backslash.
So go through Instagram and Facebook to go find your
Yeah.
website. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Well, thank you again so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And I hope anybody who has a bakery or has a venue, in Raleigh, let's see if we can buy some of Ashley's things to serve it at events and venues. But learn from Ashley and what she's doing in the shared kitchen. So everybody, thank you for tuning in. We had like 13 people on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn the whole time. So it was a popular conversation. So thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And everybody, I am taking July 2nd off because they will be on site with a client, but I will be back on July 8th. So until then, stay safe and eat well and have a fabulous 4th of July. Thanks.